MAID advocates talk a lot about dignity. So should we as Christians. But when we use that word, we mean something different, something better about what it means to be human and how we live and die as the people of God's hand. What about this other word, compassion? Our culture also speaks very loudly about compassion when it talks about MAID. And I think it's probably here that we as Christians feel the tug towards MAID most acutely, because we are a people shaped by our God, and our God is compassionate. Psalm 116, which we read, God is merciful. His people are merciful too. We love compassion, and we want to be compassionate. So why would we oppose ending someone's life when they feel like their suffering is too much to bear? I had a conversation recently with someone on campus who knew I was a Christian and is interested in MAID from an academic point of view. And she said, doesn't your Bible say, do unto others as you would have them do unto you? You don't want to suffer, so why would you ask someone else to keep suffering? She said, I also put my cat down when it was old and suffering. I said, you also probably neutered your cat without asking it. So let's not push the analogy between being a human and an animal too much. But her comment does strikes a nerve, right? Do unto others. We don't want to suffer. Why would we let others suffer? Words like compassion and mercy and love, for us as Christians, they don't float free from the biblical story. They don't float free from the biblical story where we learn of the limits that God has put on a human life, where we learn of God's commands, thou shalt not kill, and above all, where we learn God's character. To quote Stanley Hauerwas again, words like care, love, and compassion can be self-deceptive if they're not disciplined by our theological commitments. In other words, if they're not shaped by the Bible. That's where we look. And the Bible tells us, it gives us a kind of framework for comprehending suffering and for understanding how we deal with that. And the Bible shows us living between the resurrection of Jesus and his coming again in glory. God's victory over death, sin and suffering has already taken place in the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. But the full realization of that victory in this world and in our lives has not yet taken place. So as a result, as Christians, we have joy and peace and love. But present in our life is also grief and suffering and injustice. As Christians, we're not called to a kind of stiff-lipped acceptance of suffering. We're certainly not called to celebrate it.